Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Niche Pursuits podcast. I'm your host, Spencer Haws from nichepursuits.com. And before we jump into today's episode, I wanted to tell you a little bit about Ezoic. Ezoic is an ad platform that I have been using on my niche site project for site, and I've been very happy with it. Ezoic is a Google award-winning technology that everyone from niche website owners to major brands use to grow and monetize their websites. Ezoic is also a Google certified publishing partner. The platform leverages artificial intelligence to learn from website visitors with the goal of providing more personalized experiences that will improve on-page experiences, which is session length, while also optimizing revenue and monetization on a per visitor basis. The Ezoic platform features everything from intelligent website analytics to advanced automated visitor segmentation tools that allow publishers to improve visitor experiences and increase overall website revenue. Overall, there really are some big benefits to using Ezoic. It's more than just an ad platform, but it truly is a platform that allows publishers to implement sophisticated ad operations and monetization practices on their websites using advanced artificial intelligence. This allows publishers to manage as much or as little as they want. You simply drag and drop ad placeholders, and Ezoic will help automatically test thousands of ad partners, ad locations, ad types, and control ad density. This means Ezoic optimizes revenue and engagement for each unique visitor, maximizing the revenue publishers earn. If you want to go and check out Ezoic, you can go to nichepursuits.com/Ezoic. Again, that's nichepursuits.com/Ezoic. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Niche Pursuits podcast. I'm your host, Spencer Haws from nichepursuits.com. And today I've got a great interview for you. I've got Adam Steele from Loganics.net. Now, Adam is somebody that's been around the affiliate marketing and link building world for a long time. He actually started back at an affiliate network that I'm familiar with, but a lot of people now may not be. It is Neverblue. He started working there, and that's how he got introduced to a lot of people doing online business, SEO, affiliate marketing, offers, etc. And that led him down the road of services and link building services that he could offer. And in particular, he was on a lot of forums way back in the day. We're talking 2010 on the Wicked Fire forums, Warrior Forum, other places where you could buy and sell services. And so he was started out as like Gmail accounts and then local citations, business, directory listings, and has evolved ever since then. So I'll let Adam tell his entire story there, but it's really interesting, and he's built a really solid business. They now have done, in their best year, they've done $3 million in revenue, and he's got 14 full-time employees and a large remote team behind him. And so we talk about how he's been able to achieve that success. But then in the second part of the interview, we dive into link building strategies. Specifically, we talk about two different types of link building strategies. One is for local SEO and how people that own a local business should be optimizing those Google listings, those map listings, and other things. He talks about a couple of things there that local businesses can do. And then I know that most of my listeners here on the podcast are affiliates or own affiliate websites. So I ask Adam what he thinks about link building for affiliate sites. What are the best strategies to follow? And I even ask him a somewhat awkward question in the fact that I ask, what does he think Google thinks about the services that he offers, the link building services that he has and how he goes about that. So listen for that towards the end of the interview. We talk about that as well. Overall, it was great to have Adam on the podcast and interview him. If you want to check out Loganics, his link building company, you can use my affiliate link, which I would be very happy if you did. That's at nichepursuits.com/Loganics. Again, that is nichepursuits.com/Loganics. Even if you don't do that, I hope you enjoyed the interview very much. Thank you. Hey Adam, welcome to the Niche Pursuits podcast.
Hey, Spencer. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the podcast and to hear about the business that you've built and then talk a little bit about link building strategies and other general business strategies. But before we do that, I'd like to just get a little bit of a brief background on your business and work experience previous to starting Loganics. What were you doing?
I got started in the affiliate space, as many of, I guess, my contemporaries did as well. Not so much running offers or anything like that, but more on the affiliate network side of things. So I worked for a company called Neverblue, which is based out of Victoria. Yeah, I think they're still around. I think they mainly stick to a couple verticals like dating and maybe a couple other things like tech downloads and things like that. But I got started in their compliance department. I was an intern at the time. And so I was exposed to a lot of different traffic sources because it was my job to essentially validate the traffic that was being sent along. And so I spent a lot of time in email trying to figure out whether the traffic that was being sent to our advertisers was legit and was being done by sort of legit ways. So a little bit of social, a lot of SEOs, a lot of reviewing sites and seeing what they were up to and reading their content and even talking to the affiliates themselves. So sometimes when we found stuff, it might just be they were logging in to our platform by a whole whack of different random IP addresses. And so that would, sort of create a red flag for us. And we started asking some questions, or maybe they were logging in from a particular location. And that was a location that we had sort of connected with a lot of sort of spam. I'd give them a call and see if I could get on a sort of face-to-face call and see who they were and that kind of thing. So that impacted my trajectory very much. And it was there actually that I was exposed to SEO in the first place and sort of had my mind sort of blown that there were folks that were actively, for lack of better phrasing, manipulating the results that I'd sort of come to trust so much at that time. I grew up basically with Google. I'd always had it from sort of the first time I turned on the computer almost. So you just come to trust it. I'm 31, so just to give you a sense of timeline. So that was in 2009-ish. And then in 2010, I left Neverblue and went out on my own. And I guess I'd seen so many folks, young folks like myself, 19, 20, 21, 22, that we were cutting these big affiliate checks for. And I figured, what if I, having just seen what I just seen, what if I could take those same sort of strategies, tactics, what have you, and employ them for businesses instead? And by that, I mean like local businesses instead of like dating advertisers and things like that. Maybe I could make checks like that. And so off I went and sort of just tried to convince folks to to hire me to do that sort of thing. And I was not especially successful, I would have to say, for the first year or two. Trying to convince folks to do that was much harder than anticipated. I would suspect, kind of knowing what I know now, that they probably looked at me and just assumed I had, all this stuff was pretty new to folks. It was like the explaining SEO then versus explaining SEO now. Most business owners, I find nowadays, already know what SEO is. I don't have to explain it to them, which is incredible. Back then, they had no idea. Right. So there was, not only did I have to explain to them what it is I had to convince them that I actually knew what it was. And I barely knew what it was at the time. So I think that lack of confidence definitely shown. So I ended up spending a lot of time in internet marketing forums like Warrior Forum, a lot of time in wickedfire.com, and just trying to figure out what those folks were doing to make money. And eventually I stumbled across the buy, sell, trade section. I looked again what other folks were doing, and I kind of just copied them essentially. I mean, there's sort of no way around that. I just looked at what they were doing and copied them and put up my own sales thread. And I was sort of off to the races for the most part.
So to clarify just a little bit, so you left Neverblue and then you immediately went to essentially trying to sell services or some sort of consulting to local businesses rather than building your own affiliate sites. Is that right?
Yeah, I guess the affiliate space itself, I was dabbling in a little bit, but I don't know if it's less technical now, but at the time, even something as simple as figuring out how to track my campaigns was complicated for me.
Right.
Like there was a technical hurdle there that I was finding to be quite complicated. And so I gravitated more towards local search, actually, and local search, and maybe a little bit of sort of social. I don't know if there was Facebook ads at the time. There might have been just sort of something in its infancy, and so I might have been playing with that a little bit.
Okay.
But for the most part, local search.
And so you found, like you said, you found the buy, sell, trade sections of these forums, and you started selling your offerings there. Is that, had you sort of officially formed Loganics at that point, or sort of give us the evolution to, where your business is today?
Yeah. So the first thing I ever sold on that forum was Gmail accounts. So I'd seen this dude who was selling them in like 100 or 1,000 or whatever. And that just seemed like the easiest thing, because I was kind of like, I was supplying somebody who had a BST thread already and was selling social bookmarks, for example, or maybe he was selling what they call those Paul and Angela links, the forum links.
I remember those.
Right?
Oh,
I
that
know,
goes way
crazy.
back. Wow.
I know, man. That certainly dates the whole thing. But,
yeah, I do remember those.
So I would sell the Gmails to those guys, and I was just creating them myself until I realized that I could hire somebody abroad to create them for me, who was much faster and much just generally better at doing it. And then that is just sort of an arbitrage type thing. So that's where I was my first sort of buy, sell, trade experience. And that morphed into, and I actually found my thread from late 2010 just the other day. I couldn't believe it. It still exists on Wickedfire. So my name was, I think I branded under something called Creature Local at the time. And I think that was kind of hat tip to the Haws, because I was watching what the Haws was doing at the time. They had landed on buy, sell, trade on Wickedfire at the exact same time. I'm pretty sure that was their first anything at the time. And they were doing branding differently than anybody else was doing it on that forum. So I took a lot from what they were doing, and they had this little creature. So I just said, creature. I'm going to call it creature and local, and that's going to be it. I'm not going to get crazy about this. And that's it. I just created this long piece of copy, and like they did, I offered some free samples. People liked what it was. And this was just citations. It was local business directory submissions.
Okay.
And again, there were folks that wanted to buy it. They bought it. And it wasn't really for a couple of years later that I rebranded. That not only did I sort of rebrand Creature Local into Loganics, but I also sort of started to move away from the forums and into sort of our own website and our own, merchant accounts and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So what year roughly was that you kind of moved away from the forums and sort of evolved the business a little bit there?
I think if I had to guess, it would be something like 2012, 2013. And I still stuck around the forums because I found that when I think I might have made an initial push to just totally cut off from the forums. And then I realized, oh crap, that's a stupid move. There's still money to be made there. Why don't I just diversify myself and have some coming in from the forums and then some coming in from other means? And so there was probably a 6-month period where I wasn't on the forums. And then I came back, and I may have gone back to Wickedfire. I think I might have started anew on Warrior Forum. And there was a couple new forums popping up around 2013 and 2014 that jumped on as well.
Okay. That makes sense. And so since that time, obviously, you have grown and, diversified a little bit of the business services that you offer as well. Can you give people a sense of how well your business is doing right now? That can be in terms of income, if you're willing to share, or any sort of metric that you're willing to share to give people an idea of where your business is now.
Sure. Our biggest year thus far has been $3 million year, which is hard to fathom considering we're selling links and citations. So it sort of doesn't compute, if you will.
Right.
This year, I don't know that we'll do better than that. We'll see. It's still got a few months to go, but I'm hoping to, but it's not too big of a deal. And And as far as, team members and whatnot, we are a remote company. So our members are distributed. Everybody's a subcontractor. So we've never had any employees per se, which has been fine. Mm-hmm. It's actually, I would say, a preference, I think, because I'm a little bit risk averse in that sense. Having the responsibility of salaries kind of scares the crap out of me.
Right.
Having the responsibility of all that overhead scares me a little bit. So I think I've kind of got pretty comfortable to the subcontractor type thing. And everybody's distributed. I think we've got something to the tune of 13, 14, 15 full-timers, people putting in, around 35, 40 hours a week approximately. Mm-hmm. And then a bunch of other folks that are either paid part-time, or there's a 10, 20 hour type thing, or they're paid on a unit base. Like maybe we might pay them like X dollars for a single local business directory submission. So we just, as many as they create is right. As much as we pay them kind of thing. And and all those people we just sort of picked up along the way. They've never just kind of used things like, is it called Upwork now? Yeah. Previously Upwork, Odesk, now Upwork. Mm-hmm. That was sort of the main thing we used to pick people up. And then a lot of it has been referrals. The family, actually, we have 2 or 3 families now that just said, oh, well, my wife could work. Should my wife work? Sure. And then, well, I've got a cousin. And so I brought a cousin in, and a lot of it grew that way and sort of continues to grow that way today.
I love it. Are most of the full-time employees located in Canada as well?
No, there are a few, like 4-ish, I think, something like that. And then there's a few more in the United States. Okay. There's one in Mexico, and then you get into the UK, and then a bunch in the Philippines.
Right.
Trying to think of, I'm forgetting a bunch, I'm sure. But yeah, just everywhere we can kind of find people that are hardworking and willing to learn.
So how do you manage that? You've got, 14 remote full-time employees. Do you have sort of weekly calls that you do as the entire company, or how are you managing, remote employees? This is a little bit of a selfish question because I've got a couple, employees and I have my ways of doing things. Just curious how you manage that.
I'm kind of figuring it out every day. So yeah. I don't have a way that works perfectly or even close to. And every month I feel like I'm changing it to something else, and everybody's getting real impatient with all my changes. Every time I read something new on a blog or in a book, I'm like, well, I should try that. And most times it doesn't work out. But the way that I'm doing it presently is I'm sort of, now that we're at this size, I'm starting to think we should have sort of an organizational structure to some sense, because I can't have everybody reporting to me.
Right.
And so we've started to create something of a top-down type of structure. And, now I only have 3 people who report to me, and whom I have calls with every week. So we have a weekly sort of, I think we just do it via Slack. So everybody's on Slack, and we'll just have a Slack call once a week to discuss how I can support them. Further, the other thing that I've recently implemented, something that I picked up from Nick Eubanks's 7-figure agency course, is he does these 3x3 calls, which are, I'm going to totally ruin this, but essentially it's the 3 most important sort of KPI related, key performance indicator related things that you accomplished that day. So I get a daily email from these 3 reports. What are the 3 most important things that you did today that are directly tied to the KPIs that we've deemed important? What were your 3 biggest roadblocks for the day? So my hope is that they'll bring them to me, and it'll be my job to try and remove those roadblocks. And what are the 3 most important questions for the day? So what questions would you have otherwise asked me on Slack, but decided not to distract? I try to teach people. Slack can be such a sort of a distraction for so many, especially those who can't just turn it off. And I include myself among them. So, when everybody's pinging each other all day long, nobody gets anything done, right? So I try to teach people to reserve their questions for at the end of the day, if they can, if it's not an emergency, and most stuff isn't. Reserve it for the end of the day, send me those, and before I go to bed, I will reply to them so that in the morning they can have the answers that they need and get going again. So
that makes sense.
Those have been 2 of the I guess main ways that I've sort of quote unquote managed people.
Okay. No, that's good. It's good to hear some insight there and how it's working for you. It sounds like you're a little bit like me and that you're always changing, trying new things, and maybe don't have everything figured out, but clearly you have enough figured out that your business is doing quite well. And so I congratulate you on that. Those are serious revenue numbers. Being able to go from, Warrior Forum, Wicked Fire forums to having a very, very solid business is something to be congratulated for. So I do that. Let's talk about how you really built the business to where it is today. I mean, I know we talked a little bit about the evolution, but what have been some of the key marketing strategies that have helped you grow Loganics and get it to where it is today?
It's a lot of the sort of obvious kind of cliche stuff. It wasn't so much the, running PPC ads. It wasn't, or like Google ads. It wasn't so much really any of the sort of textbook marketing tactics. It was more, I remember one of the biggest sort of changes in my business came in something like 2013, 2014, and was really, I would say, one of the catalysts for me starting to leave the forums was being introduced to a group that I had previously sort of considered the white hat group, if you would. And I never felt like I had a place there because I was from the forums, if you will. And it's just that, that's my own crap. But I never had the courage to reach out to them on Twitter or anything like that. I had started to run my blog a little bit on I don't know if it was on Creature Local, if it was on, I think Creature Local might have had a website at one period of time, but I don't know if it was maybe Loganics or what it was at the time. In any event, I always kind of wanted to break into this group, but I just never had a way in really. And I was invited to this Skype group by a guy named Matt Hunt. He ran a website called smallbusinessonlinecoach.com at the time. And so he invited me into this group, and in that group had the likes of like Mike Blumenthal. These are all sort of local search, I don't know, I call them almost heroes almost. They're the folks that spend so much time writing about local search, and that's how everybody seems to learn, is we follow these people who are just super generous with their time and their information and all that kind of thing. Linda, I'm forgetting, Bouquet was her last name. She ran a forum at that time, like a local search forum. Phil Rozick, Darren Shaw were at White Spark. Like, it had all these sort of names that I knew all these names. I read all these blogs, but I always felt like I just didn't quite belong, if you will. Matt invited me into that group, and I realized that there actually was a place and people were interested in sort of the other side of things, the not so white hat side of things. And so I had a little platform, and from there, I think from there I really sort of blossomed. I kind of got out of my little area and started to sort of introduce some of my ideas, and I did a lot of sort of experiments at the time. I don't do so many of those at the time, but using just some of those sort of grayer hat tactics and trying those out and seeing how those worked, and just sort of testing the algorithm, if you will.
Yeah.
And that helped me out. That helped me make a lot of connections, and a lot of those folks and a lot of folks that they knew started to send me business. So it was, sort of your typical networking, networking type of approach. And it wasn't really intentional. It just sort of happened that way. And I think I would have to say a lot of our business continues to come that way. It's just from making relationships with, folks like yourself, really. So that's been helpful. Yeah, we do a lot of the other stuff. Like, you will see us with Google Ads. You will see us for the longest time. And really, this has only begun to change in the last 3 to 6 months. We had not done really any of our own SEO, none of our own link building. Like I said, Google Ads is a relatively new thing for us. We're building a new website. So the longest time, we've completely ignored the traditional channels,
right,
or the other sort of traditional channels. And finally, we were starting to see our competitors just totally whoop our ass and just be so far ahead of us that we realized that we had to kind of get serious about these things. And so we have.
Yeah, no, that's good to hear that you started, or at least what's been able to grow the business is, a lot of networking, reaching out and getting referrals. I think that is the case for a lot of people. So interesting to hear your side of the story as well on that. I want to shift the discussion a little bit to actually some of the link building strategies that you're using for your clients. And you may not have the exact percentage or anything, but roughly, can you give our listeners an idea of what percentage or what amount of your business is for local SEO clients as opposed to like affiliate marketers or people that are building affiliate sites?
Very much a guess, but if I had to guess, it would be a 70-30, 70% location-based businesses. So it's agencies approaching us with their location-based clients.
Okay.
And we're, sort of doing the work in the background, white label sort of thing.
Okay.
And then the other, 30% would be all kinds, e-commerce, affiliate, non-location based businesses, non-agency business.
Yeah. So is it primarily then you working directly with agencies and you're kind of the white label service behind that?
Yeah, that's always been the biggest chunk of our business and continues to be. And it's not a bad model because, I could spend a lot of time courting one client and I would get one client's business. Or I could spend the exact amount of time courting an agency and I can get 10 clients, 20 clients, 30 clients.
Right.
Or more,
Yep. That makes a lot of sense. So what are some local SEO strategies that retail companies are often not very good at or don't implement very often?
I think it's somewhat misunderstood how big an impact their organic ranking, so their non-local, non-paid ranking is, like how big of a ranking factor it is in the local algorithm. So there's sort of this non-local algorithm, which sort of is the organic algorithm, if you will. And then there's the local algorithm, and they're quite separate, but they're also quite intertwined as well. And I've found, and we recently did a study on this on our blog, is we found that there is very sort of high correlation between how well you rank organically and thusly how well you rank in local search. So in the sort of local pack, if you will. So I think it's not well understood among certainly local business owners, but even agencies, local search agencies and SEO agencies, and just more broadly marketing agencies, how important that organic rank is in the sort of grander scheme of things. So to me, that seems like a big one.
Yeah. So can you give us an example of that? Just if you have an example business, of where either they are or not doing well in organic search versus, local search and how they can improve. It doesn't have to be a client example, but hypothetical example.
Yeah. So a hypothetical might be, a lot of folks, they come to me and they're, I've done the citations, I've got reviews coming in. So citations being local business directory submissions. I've got reviews coming in. I've done a little bit of link building. I don't understand why I'm not top 3 in maps. They're basically quoting all the things that would appeal to the local algorithm. And so I would then look at that example. Usually the very first thing, especially if they've just told me they've done all this good stuff, the first thing I'm looking at is their organic ranking. And oftentimes I will find that they're on page 2 or 3 or 4 or beyond for the keyword that they wish to rank for in local search. And so my first recommendation will be that to shift some of the budget that they've been putting into, say, monthly local business directory submissions or what have you, into link building, so as to link building and potentially, if they haven't done a lot of on-page SEO, to those two things at the very least to improve their organic ranking. So that's something I see at least every week, because I do still spend a good amount of time just in our support inbox, just sort of reading what people are having trouble with, so that I can try and solve those problems where I can. But that's sort of the most common hypothetical that I see.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
And so what I recommend to them is, again, based on this the data that we've collected, but also just experience, you got to get on first page. You absolutely must be on first page. And it's not totally black and white like that, of course, but if we looked across 1,000 SERPs, something like that, and it was pretty clear that businesses that weren't on first page weren't in top 3.
And do you mean, and again, to clarify, maybe this is a simple question, but I'm sure some listeners are wondering as well. To clarify, do you mean for like the same term? So let's say I'm a local dentist here and I live in Richland, Washington. So my term is, Richland, Washington dentist, right? I assume that's going to pull up, a local map listings, right, for that key phrase. But are you saying also, I'm looking at that same Richland, Washington dentist keyword, I want to look at the organic listings below the maps as well to see where I rank? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. You would want to not only see your domain in, let's say top 5 kind of thing, better if possible. And that's among your competitors. That's one really important thing to understand. That's not, you could have 3 local business directories ahead of you, like Yelp, for example, or yellowpages.com ahead of you for that keyword. That doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's among your competitors that you need to be, well ranked organically. So you want to see yourself well ranked in the organic. So page 1 organic, and in turn, you certainly have a much better chance of ranking well in local search. So in the maps.
Yep. Okay. No, that clarifies pretty well. That's a great tip and strategy there for sure. So here's kind of what I would call a little bit of a gray hat question here is, let's say let's just use me as an example. I am not a local business. I run my blog, nichepursuits.com. It's just a blog with no local services whatsoever. Are there some strategies I should be implementing that would even be useful to show up for local search terms for niche pursuits? I mean, so the general question is, should affiliate sites be including their address and their phone number and trying to get business directory citations? Is that useful at all, or should those two be completely separate?
It's just a harder road because there is a lot more sort of spam measures in place. So it's something that's existed since the beginning of local search, the beginning of what was called at one period of time Google Places. Mm-hmm. There's always been affiliates making different sort of hybrid affiliate local plays. Weight loss would be an excellent example where they would rank for weight loss city name, and they wouldn't actually really have any sort of local offering, if you will. They don't have a real business location or anything of the sort, but they're looking to get you on their page because you otherwise wouldn't be on their page, mm-hmm. and to sell you some offer while sort of pretending to be local. And I think that sort of localness, not only do they get the eyeballs, but that localness inspires a little bit of trust. Oh, this is a local business. Oh, yeah, that looks like they're just located down the street from me, or in town, or whatever. But now, while there's still plenty of people playing that game, it's just harder. There's a lot more attrition, meaning you end up losing a lot more listings. Does that mean there isn't still a business model to be made there? Of course there is. But it's a lot harder than it was, because there are a lot more, there's a lot more sort of automated controls in place, mm-hmm. but also there's a lot of more business owners and agencies with tools and knowledge to combat that. So a lot more spam fighters, if you will, a lot more ways to report, and it's a lot easier. Well, I wouldn't say easier, but a lot more ways to get those sort of fake listings removed. Yeah. So there's a play there, but you got to be able to make a sort of a business case for it, and that's not as easy as it was, I think. Yeah,
that answers my question. It sounds like what I've been doing is where I should stick. I don't intend to sort of use my affiliate sites to get a local business listing or anything like that, but I wanted to ask and get your thoughts on that. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I do want to shift now to talking about affiliate sites and specifically link building for affiliate sites. Most of my listeners here on the podcast are, affiliate site owners or builders of those types of sites, as opposed to local business owners, although there are definitely local business owners listening in as well. What link building strategies do you recommend for affiliate site owners right now?
What I see most often, first I would recommend checking out Gael and Mark's podcast as well. They do some good work as it relates to link building. Like, they personally do a lot of really good work as it relates to link building, and thus, not sure if I should be shouting out other podcasts on your podcast,
Absolutely,
but
no, that's fine.
I have to commend them because they're just very consistent on delivering good content around link building, especially as it relates to affiliates and sort of what they call, I guess, authority sites, and then selling those sites, which is really cool as well. But what I'm seeing more often than not are affiliates engaging in outreach. So they're doing a lot of, if they're not doing sort of the more gray hat approach, and they're sort of trying to, if their goal is to actually build a good site and maybe sell that site eventually, or maybe have that site for a long time, then they tend to gravitate, or it seems like they're gravitating towards a more white hat approach, and they're doing a lot of outreach,
right.
Sometimes at incredible scale, and creating really, really, really great content, which I know is quite cliche as well. But in a world where these inboxes are so full of folks saying, hey, I noticed you're linking to him. I have a better piece of content for you. Why don't you link to me? It's pretty hard to differentiate yourself, in any sort of meaningful way other than literally having like a 10x piece of content compared to everybody else.
Right.
So I see a lot of folks just kind of approaching it from, creating sort of Brian Dean level of content, if the SERP sort of dictates, that is. And what I mean by that is, I think while I love almost everything that Brian has put out and continues to put out, he's really raised the bar for everybody kind of. But it isn't always necessary to create a 10x piece of content. I think instead I would preach that you need to approach this on sort of a SERP by SERP basis. So what does that particular SERP for that keyword dictate that you need to do? Is it a listicle? Is it a full-blown editorial? Is it who's ranking? Why are they ranking? Try and do what Google is saying is going to work, and you don't necessarily need to do that and do it like 100 times X or anything. Just do what's working and do it a little bit better kind of thing. Instead of because you can pour a ton of resources and ton of money into producing content and creating images around that content and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, if the keyword isn't even really worth it at the end of the day, like it's not actually going to, translate into like money that's going to pay your bills and at least pay for what you invested in that article, then what are you doing? Right. So do what the SERP dictates kind of thing. And that might mean creating an insanely great piece of content. And then, like I said, these folks that are approaching me a lot of times have done it themselves, sometimes very successfully, but now are looking for greater scale and looking to, pick up additional links and in addition to what they're already picking up via just hammering out emails, to blogs and webmasters and contributors and writers and all that kind of stuff. So that seems the majority of what I see is folks looking to do outreach or are doing outreach, and they're looking to just sort of scale that up a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. So at Loganics, are you doing a lot of outreach? Is that one of the things that you do for agencies?
So a lot of what we do, we don't necessarily do the outreach for the agency or for their client specifically. We're doing it anyways. Like we're doing it day after day after day, just for any of the sort of important niches or any of the industries that we have a lot of demand for. So we're just doing it kind of to build our own Rolodex and then be able to revisit that Rolodex when we have the demand. So to have the supply when we have the demand, or to fulfill the demand that we already have via that Rolodex. So a lot of,
Gotcha.
I would say 80% of what we do is just to build that. 80% of the outreach that we do is to build that Rolodex. And then maybe 20% of what we do is sort of on demand outreach. So we would have maybe a bigger publisher or a bigger affiliate site, or, a bigger agency with a bigger client approach us and say, hey, we're looking to do something a little bit bigger. We need at least 20 links per month. How can you help us? And so 20 links in a particular niche per month, we would go through our list pretty quickly, maybe in 6 months kind of thing, especially if their requirements are high, like say 10,000 monthly. We sell based on monthly organic visitors. That is, that's how we categorize our sites, and thus how people buy them. They say, I want a site of 10,000 monthly organics or greater in a particular niche. So we would run out of 10,000 or greater pretty quickly if the requirement was 20 links of a particular niche per month. And so often cases folks come to us and say, hey, we're looking for more of a retainer style type of thing. So that would amount for, let's say 10, 15, maybe 20% of what we do.
Okay. So also just to clarify there, so basically, or to restate there, a lot of what you're doing is outreach, but it's you're basically just building up your database of sites that are willing to basically accept a guest post or accept some sort of link addition to their site, right? That you can sort of, when the time comes down the road, you can reach out to them and say, hey, we've got this opportunity. This client is looking for this. Are you willing to do that? Is that essentially the gist of it?
Yeah. And just for transparency's sake, some of these are totally paid opportunities. So they're not all, folks that are just looking for us to add value to their site. I mean, that
Sure.
is part of it, I'm sure. But for the most, I'm sure a big part of it is also the money that they're taking in as well. And that's something that we've seen become more popular, I guess the word might be, over time. Mm-hmm. When we first started this, often we would be able to create a great piece of content that would add value to the site and make that argument, and they would accept that piece of content and be really excited about it. But I think as a result of all the outreach that they get, and probably as a result of folks kind of just being really forward with them and saying, hey, $100 plus this piece of content, are you down? And they're like, what? You're going to give me $100 and a good piece of content? Mm-hmm. And now when anybody else approaches them, they're like, well, yeah, and it's going to be $100 too.
Right.
So that's becoming, and these are totally legit sites too.
Sure.
So it's frustrating because you sort of, at one period of time, I would have sort of felt like, well, it's the less legit sites that are going to want money, not the, the really well-developed ones. Well, no, not really. And sometimes it'll be done under the guise of what's called sort of like a media kit. They'll put together this sort of scrappy media kit and be like, yes, well, here's our media kit, and these are our prices, and these are our demographics. And you can kind of tell that they kind of just created this just to try and look on the up and up. But
right,
it is what it is nowadays.
So how do you think Google feels about that? I mean, for listeners that are listening in that want to stay completely white hat, is this something they should be concerned about, knowing that, in a roundabout way, I mean, you're not. Anyways, if they go through you, eventually there is going to be money exchanged hands with the webmaster that's placing the content and the link. How does Google feel about that? How do you think about that?
I certainly don't know how Google feels about that. I mean, they're pretty clear about, if it's paid, it's bad.
Right.
Period.
Yeah.
But I question how well they're able to, like, how do they know I didn't pay for an opportunity to be on, I don't know, just some random blog? How do they know? I mean,
right.
They
don't.
The way that I think they might know is looking at historical, like, if historical is a bad word, but like the way that I often do this when we're sort of qualifying blogs for inclusion into our Rolodex is we'll pull up the last 10 posts, and we're looking at how the content is written. We're looking at things like what anchor they chose. We're looking at who they chose to link to. All these sort of things that might make it obvious that these are paid links. And often it's so bloody obvious. I think these sites just get lazy and they get money hungry, and they're just like, whatever. Yeah, yep. Let's do it. We'll Casino? Sure. Love casinos. And it becomes very obvious. And so I could imagine linking out to what someone might call a bad neighborhood site could start to create sort of webs and connections of other sort of nefarious link building tactics. So once we start seeing a trend of that sort of behavior among our webmasters or contributors, then we just kind of cut them off more or less and say, right. Sorry guys, this is too risky for us right now. So I think I would sort of encourage anybody who's doing any of this sort of thing to spend some time, not only just looking at the metrics. Metrics are important, but spend some time actually looking at the site itself, including, who they're linking out to and how they're doing it and all that kind of stuff. So I think if Google's going to connect the dots, that's going to be pretty obvious way that they're going to do it, I would think.
Yeah, I think that's great tips. That makes sense. Any final link building or just general SEO strategies that you'd like to share that we haven't already covered before we wrap up here?
Yeah, I think just sort of to continue on the sort of tangent that we're on right now, as these sites are, now that they seem to they kind of expect money. I think your pitch, if you don't want to pay money, and there's certainly, we have plenty of sites that we do business with that don't accept money. And they've chosen to go that route because they want to be on the up and up, and they're very, they have a belief system and they're sticking to it, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
But when you're approaching sites like that are getting bombarded with, pitches and payments and all that kind of stuff, you really have to up your game a little bit. And so one of the ways that we've been successful is spending a little bit of time learning about the site itself. How are they monetizing? Throwing them in Ahrefs and understanding which keywords they're ranking for, which maybe they're ranking for, but they're on page 2 for, which it would make sense that they would want to rank for, and then approaching them and being like, hey guys, there's this keyword that I totally think you guys should be ranking for. Maybe you just haven't got around to it. I have this writer. He writes about this stuff all the time. I think if we put together a piece, let's say 1,500, 2,000, 2,500 words on this topic, I bet you could earn, 2, 5, 10,000 more monthly organic visitors, which I suspect would convert on this particular offer that you have in your sidebar.
Yeah.
And you kind of come to them with a value proposition. And then instead of giving them money, instead of directly giving them money, you're still giving them an opportunity to grow their site, an opportunity to make money. You're just doing it sort of indirectly. So I think a little bit more time spent doing that, a little bit more time maybe getting out of the inbox. The inbox isn't the only way to contact these folks. They have Twitter profiles oftentimes. Sometimes mass email, while it totally works, isn't always the way into all of these sites. So I think today's link building environment requires a bit, or it may require a bit more creativity, a bit more effort on the link builders end.
Absolutely. Yeah. Being able to sort of stand out from the crowd. All of us get so many emails that, if somebody's able to reach out in a different way or provide a better value proposition, like you mentioned, that is definitely a way to stand out. Overall, Adam, I really appreciate you coming on to the Niche Pursuits podcast. I have to assume that the best place for people to go if they're listening is just the website, right? Loganics.net.
Yeah, and you're one of the few that pronounces it correctly. So thank you.
Oh, well, good. And I didn't even verify that, so it worked for me. Yeah. But I actually do have a link that if people want to go through so that I get credit, they can go to nichepursuits.com/Loganix, and I'll spell that. It's LOGANIX. That people can go and check out your services and follow along with you. You've got a blog there as well, correct?
Yeah, like I said, we're trying to start working on the more traditional marketing channels, and one of those is creating the useful content.
Absolutely. Very good, Adam. I appreciate your time, and thanks again for coming on the Niche Pursuits podcast.
My pleasure. I appreciate your time as well.
Thank you once again for listening to the Niche Pursuits podcast. As a reminder, this episode has been sponsored by Ezoic. Ezoic is a Google Award-winning technology that everyone from niche website owners to major brands use to grow and monetize their websites. Ezoic is a Google certified publishing partner. It's a platform that leverages artificial intelligence to help you optimize revenue and monetization on a per visitor basis, and so much more. If you want to check out Ezoic, go to nichepursuits.com/Ezoic. Again, that's nichepursuits.com/Ezoic. Thanks a lot.